Hey everybody, welcome back to homerecordingmadeeasy.com and here on my YouTube channel. And this week we're going to start part 2 of working in Ozone 9 by Izotope. This is the advanced version on how I use this to master my music. If you missed part 1, you could click the link in the description box below where we walk through the basic interface, and I'm going to take you step by step. This week we're going to take a look at the Master Assistant tool here in Ozone 9. But before we get started, if this is your first time here, I want to give you a free mixing course. So if you go out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, right on the homepage, click on the orange button and download your free mixing course today. And I also want to give you a coupon code. It's in the description box below. If you want to purchase one of my other training courses on the website, you can use the coupon code YouTube25, and that will take 25% off any one of my training courses. And if you stick around till the end of the video, I have a really cool deal on some mastering stuff. So make sure you stay tuned. So let's head on in here to Ozone 9. So now again, if you missed part 1, this is the standalone version. I have the advanced version, but they make an Elements a standard and an advanced. We talked about that in the last video. If you want to purchase Ozone 9, any one of the versions, again, all the links will be in the description box below. Purchase it from sweetwater.com. That's where I buy all my stuff. They're awesome people. All those links will take you right out to their website. So make sure you check that out. The difference between the 3 versions are really just how many modules come with each one of the versions. And we talked about that last week. So now that we're here, we opened up Ozone 9, we're going to import an audio file and we're going to use the Master Assistant. Okay, so before we talk a little bit about the Master Assistant, let's go ahead and import an audio file, shall we? So there's a couple of ways you can do it. The easiest way is to come up here to File and go to Import Audio Files. And I am going to go out to my desktop and I'm going to take a song that I quickly mixed last week. Okay, and it's going to import it here into Ozone, and you'll see it right along the top here. The name of the track is I'm All Right. Okay, so the very first thing you'll see is you'll have like an EQ that kind of pops up if you want to kind of shape that. We'll talk about that in a bit, but we're just going to go ahead, and if we click anywhere in here, you'll see the playhead moves, and you'll see we can just hit play and you'll hear the song here. I know the season's right for change. Okay, you can just hit the space bar to go ahead and to stop that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use the Master Assistant. So if we click on the Master Assistant button, what this does is it gives you, it listens to our audio and that we have our file, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to determine, based on some of the parameters that we set up here on this screen, what modules we need and kind of do what I would like to call like a pre-master. It gets you going in the right ballpark, okay? And so let's see what this is. So it asks you, what are you going for? Are we going for modules, a modern or a vintage vibe? And we'll talk about the differences between the two in future videos in this series. Again, check the playlist to see those videos depending on when you're watching this video. And you can click here or here. And if you hover over, it will give you a little helpful tip here. It tells you creates a processing chain using using non-vintage modules or vintage modules. So we'll just stick with modern for now. In the middle here, number 2, loudness and EQ. Now we can either use a reference, we can do it manually, meaning we're going to go ahead and we're going to play back this audio in a second. It's going to listen to the audio and then it's going to add, it's going to, based on what it hears, it's going to calculate and it's going to, do some of its magic, which I'll show you. Or you can use a reference track where you can load a reference track if you're looking for the same kind of volume and EQ curve of a reference track that you use when you mixed your song, which can be a completely different artist and song than the one that you mix, but it's in the same style, the same genre. You can do that as well. For now, we will stick with manual just for the sake of simplicity. And then you have intensity, low, medium, and high. Again, it defaults to medium. And again, it's going to, if you look at here, it says if you go on low, it's going to set the target loudness to -14 LUFS. Medium is going to be -12. High is going to be -11. Okay, let's just stick with medium for now, but you can choose one of the 3. And then lastly, which is really the most important part of this screen, I feel, is the destination. Is your music going to a streaming platform or is it going to a CD? Okay, streaming platforms typically have a different loudness requirement than a CD does. And you can see over here, if you hover my cursor over streaming, it sets the maximizer to a ceiling of -1. That's pretty standard for things like Apple iTunes, Spotify, and those types of places. And if you use CD, it's going to set the maximizer to a ceiling of -0.03 for lossless output formats, okay? So it's going to be a little bit louder. So we're going to go from a -1 to a -0.3, okay? Which is almost a clipping. So most people today are doing stuff on streaming platforms, but you can click either one. Okay, so now that you do that, so we pick our three, they ask us these 3 questions, we answer the questions, pretty straightforward, and then we click next. And it's going to say waiting for me to play audio. So what it's waiting for is for me to maybe get to the loudest part of my song, which is typically the last chorus, play back the audio, it's going to listen and it's going to do its thing. Now, what it's going to do is, and I want to prepare you, once I play back the audio, when it calculates, you're going to see it's going to do its thing, and then the music's going to get louder because it's going to put the maximizer with the limiter on it. So just be prepared. So you may want to turn down your headphones a little bit, turn down your studio monitors. I'll try to adjust it in post, but just in case I forget, go ahead and do that. So you want to go to the loudest part of the song, which is typically around the 3rd chorus here. Pick up the pieces that I left in you. I'm all right. Feel it from you, and I'll be fine. Cleaning out the corn, put it back in order. No, I will always have this too. Okay. Okay, let me turn my headphones back up. So now that it's done, you saw that it went through and analyzed the audio. It set up the equalizer, and it adjusts the balance. It adjusts the dynamic range. It bypassed the dynamics. No extreme dynamic range was detected because if you have a good mix, which you hopefully do, it doesn't have way extreme dynamics. Therefore, it doesn't have a dynamics processor enabled because you don't need it, which is great. It set the maximizer threshold to the target loudness. Remember, we said we was for a streaming platform, so it set our threshold to that. It analyzed the maximizer frequency, and then it set the dynamic EQ to improve maximizer transparency. So you heard that it automatically got a little bit louder. Now you can just say, we'll accept these changes. If you want to do it over again, you can always X out of here and go through the process again, but we're going to say accept. And now you're going to see here at the top of the screen where it added the modules. It added an EQ, and you can see the EQ curve. It added the dynamics, which again, it bypassed it. It's grayed out because there were no extreme dynamics. So it didn't add any compression to this because it analyzed it and felt like it didn't need it. Although you could turn that on and adjust it. We'll show you that. It added a dynamic EQ. And then here's our maximizer here as well. And so it already added a bunch of modules for us. So now if I were to start to play this back, let's say anywhere here from the first verse, and then what I'm going to do here, I want you to take a look at the input meter and the output meter. You'll see that the output meter is louder than the input meter, right? It's set here, our maximizer module. It's set our ceiling to a -1, right, for the streaming platform. And it set the threshold based on that. Now we can adjust this. We could turn the threshold up and down to adjust the overall volume level. And there's some other things here as well. And we're going to go through each one of these modules in detail in upcoming videos. I'm not going to spend any time going through each detail. I want to keep these videos short and concise, but we will go through each one of the modules in its own video, and I'll explain to you what each one of these parameters do, and we'll play around with it a little bit. But I want you to take a look at the input and the output meter, and then I'm just going to hit I'm going to first hit the gain match. Last video in part 1, I told you what the gain match is going to do. It's going to set the level, the monitoring level now, for before and after to the same. So when we bypass and turn all the modules on and off that was recommended by Ozone 9 here, we could hear, did it get any better before we make any other adjustments? What did it do? Let's find out. So I know the seasons. Okay, so
I know the seasons right for change. It's changing all around. I know the reasons you've arranged. They're tearing me down.
so you can hear a little bit of a difference there. And you noticed as I bypassed and turned it on and off, the gain didn't change because I used the gain match feature. If I turn that, right? Big volume jump. We don't want that, right? Because we want to be able to A/B the processing of the EQ, the dynamics, and all that stuff, and any other modules that we add as we move forward in our series here, want it to be at the same volume level. So when you hit gain match, it doesn't actually change the output on the meter. All it does is make sure that when you bypass on and off, it's at the same volume level. So in other words, it doesn't physically turn down the overall volume boost that it gave it during the maximizer process. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Okay, and you can just tell by looking at the meters, the input meter isn't as loud as the output meter. Why? Because we added about, what, 3 or 4 dB of gain to this, is what it sounds like, because I brought it in at around a -6, -5. It's added about 5 dB of gain, 4 dB of gain, and now it's coming up to a -1. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so if you listen to what this does, again, it kind of, you can hear it get a little.
I know the seasons right for change.
So what we're hearing there is we're hearing that little bit of a roll off here. At 75 hertz, it took out about a half a dB, the master assistant, based on what it heard of our final mix. And then it added a little bit of a shelf here at, what, 18K, about almost 0.7 dB, not even 1 dB. So it listened to our music and it felt that the EQ balance, the perspective, there was pretty good. It didn't make a lot of adjustments, that's what should happen if you have a good mix. It shouldn't be any craziness in the EQ curve if you've done your mix well. Again, the dynamics button or the dynamics module turned off because it didn't hear anything that really needed to be compressed based on the dynamics of that last chorus. The dynamic EQ, what it did here is it gave us the ability, and what I'm going to turn to is I'm going to turn down the output here physically, so when I turn this on, we don't get blown out here again. You'll see where it's pulling out a little bit here at 295 hertz, 4 dB. When it hears, what's great about this EQ, this dynamic EQ, is it only, as things start to peak in these frequency ranges, it pulls it down a little bit, kind of like a multi-band compressor would do, kind of, sort of, but with an EQ. And at 331, it pulled out 4 dB, and at almost 5K, 4 dB, and then at 13K, pulled out 2 dB. Now you can adjust these, you can move these anywhere you want.
I know the seasons right for change. It's changing.
Oh, by accident, I deleted the module, but we can do undo. We can use our undo button from the last video and it added the module right back. I closed it out by mistake. If you want to turn the modules on and off, you can solo them and just turn them on and off by this, or the bypass button that I'm using is bypassing all of the modules, just so you realize that, okay? If you just want to bypass one module, you would do that right here. Let's
I know the seasons right for change. It's changing all.
So as you can see, it's only pulling it down as those particular frequencies get a little bit too much. It peaks a little bit, it pulls it down. It's very, very subtle. As mastering should be very subtle. It's really cool. Well, actually, I turned this down manually before because I didn't want to blow us out of the video here. So you won't hear the audio difference here. But you can see as the audio passes through the screen here on the maximizer module, where it compresses and it gets over the ceiling, it hits that limiter and pulls it down. You'll see little blue lines to show it pulling it down. See, like right there, you'll see it. Okay. And again, we're going to go through each one of these modules in detail, okay? But that is basically how you use the Master Assistant. You import your audio, you come to the Master Assistant. Now, we could go back and do it again if we wanted to, right? We could go back and we can say, okay, we can do, you know, a vintage style, and we'll, you know, you could go through and you could do these things multiple times if you want. But it gives you a basic starting point. And if you're someone who's new to mastering, this is a good way to get you in the ballpark, because typically with mastering, you're going to use a little bit of EQ, right? You're always going to probably use a little bit of EQ, maybe not so much dynamic EQ, but that's pretty cool to just pull out frequencies when they peak. You don't want to, so in other words, this at 337 Hertz, it isn't cutting it out completely all the time, only when it goes above the threshold. And if I raise up the threshold, it'll do that. You know, when it goes across that line, then it's going to pull it down just a little bit. So that's really handy. And again, you're going to have a limiter of some kind, and typically a compressor of some kind as well, unless it doesn't need to be compressed. And those are the basic tools that you're going to use in mastering. So for someone who's a beginner, using the Mastering Assistant is really, really helpful just to get you in the ballpark. And in future videos in this series, we're going to add other modules like saturation, some stereo widening. We're going to do some different things to enhance it even further. But I wanted to just show you how to get started importing audio, using the Master Assistant, turning it on and off so you could hear what it kind of does. And then once you do that, you could go in and you can play around with these things. And if you feel like, you know what, it cut out too much low end here, I just want to raise this back up, this little low shelf, or increase it even more. You can do whatever you want, but it gets you in the ballpark. So I hope you found this first video here, part 2, helpful here on how to use the Master Assistant in Ozone 9. Again, if you want to purchase Ozone 9, go ahead and click the links in the description box and go out to sweetwater.com and check it out. They have the Elements, the Standard, and the Advanced version, three different price points. You can visit their website and they'll explain the differences between the 3 different versions, although I did that in last video in part 1. So go check that out. Now, if you're someone who's new to mastering music, and let's say you want to master music, but you're like, you know what, Dave, I don't want to go out and purchase, you know, this other piece of software here. You know, this can be, the standard version is $250 as of the recording of this video. This advanced version is $500. And you just don't have the budget, but you want to master music. So you may be saying, well, how do I master music? Do I have to go out and spend this much money? Well, the answer is no. This is a wonderful piece of software and I highly recommend it. And that's why I'm doing this series. But if you just want to learn how to master music without having to purchase anything, and you, with any DAW that you currently do your mixing in, you can master in that DAW very, very easily. And I show you how to do that in my course, Mastering Made Easy. You'll see an image come up on the screen here. If you use the coupon code in the description box below, YouTube25, over at homerecordingmadeeasy.com, you can get Mastering Made Easy at 25% off. So if you want to learn how to master music, and you're a beginner to mastering music, and you want to learn how to master music without buying any additional software, Mastering Made Easy is for you. I also, in that course, show you how to use this fully featured Ozone 9 to master music, as well as I show you how to master music in the mastering suite within Studio One, PreSonus Studio One version 5, the project page. So I show you in Mastering Made Easy how to master 3 different ways. Any DAW, no additional software needed. If you haven't happened to use PreSonus Studio One Professional, how to use the mastering suite, and also how to use Ozone 9. So check out Mastering Made Easy today. Again, all the links will be in the description box below. Last but certainly not least, I want to hear from you. Do you master music? If you do, what is your mastering process? What software do you use in any? Or if you don't master music, why do you feel like you don't need to? I'd love to hear from you. Leave comments below. And until the next video, I've been Dave with homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and I will see you very soon. Thanks, everybody. Take care.